Hello everybody, it's really nice to have you here. It's a pleasure to have you on our show today. I'd like to welcome Reinhardt. She's presenting her movie The Zweite Anschlag today. We also have Alisa Kovalenko with her movie Home Games. Then we have Eloy, Dominguez, Serén with Hamada. And of course also Sahra with 1,000 Girls Like Me. It's a real pleasure to have you here. I'm glad you could all make it. Mala, your movie deals with a very serious issue of also the NSU killings here in Germany that also took place here within Nuremberg. And I was wondering why you chose to present a movie with multiple protagonists and a movie essentially that dives into different perspectives of the victims who were involved in these killings.
The idea behind the film was to not only focus on like single events and what they mean for certain people, but actually like go from there, like take these events that are, you know, like at different times and in different places. So we found protagonists who have lost people, like relatives due to racist attacks, like in the 80s and the 90s, but also by the NSU. And to link it all up, like to actually look at the continuity of racism and right-wing violence in Germany and how it still exists and how it goes on and what that actually means for people and their daily lives.
Mm. I think sadly a lot of people either don't know about this or willfully choose to ignore this. What would you say to people who say that the subject of racism has been discussed already enough in the public eye or to a sufficient extent and also in private conversations? What would you tell those people?
I would say that certain perspectives have definitely been discussed quite a lot, and when you look at media you will see that there's like a lot of like news about racism and right-wing attacks, but the perspective of those people who are affected by it, who actually live with the consequences, they hardly get heard. And so that's what we were focusing on in the film. And when you meet the protagonists, but also other people, you will see that they've got a lot to say, and they want to be, they want people to listen, and they want people to see. So I think that's still something that's maybe not discussed enough already.
What was it like to work with them in general? What was the work process like, and how did they receive the film once it finished?
I must say, like, we were very careful in approaching our protagonists because we knew that some of them, or almost all of them, had already had like bad experiences with media teams. So, you know, people who just like kind of like barged in, they already had like their story fixed and they just needed some, you know, quotes from them.
Sensationalism was a problem.
And so, yeah, and they wouldn't like recognize themselves anymore in the product, you know, like later on. And so we were very careful in approaching them, and we gave them a lot of time as well. So we also always try to involve them throughout the process, and up to today we are still in touch with all of them, and they also go to screenings with us and present the film. Like, in fact, last month in September, no one from the film team could go to one of the screenings, so Osman and Ibrahim, like two of our protagonists, actually went and presented the film alone without us. So yeah, I think we've got a lot of support, and also they trusted us a lot. So, and all of them saw the film, like all our protagonists saw the film before the premiere, and all of them gave their go for it. So yeah,
that's great to hear. Something that I've noticed within your movie is the way you shot it is almost like a more neutral position that you took. You basically just let the people talk. There are no flashy or special aesthetic camera movements or anything like that. Why did you make that specific choice as opposed to journalists and the news when they approached the members or also the protagonists of your film as well? All of this was happening.
We talked a lot about like the visuality of the film before we went into production, and we also realized that with a lot of like especially with news pieces, you will see that there's a lot like zooming in, and you know, like when it gets emotional, like the camera tries to even kind of like, make it even more like that. And we didn't want that. Like, we wanted to really just let the people speak it, but also that they take the space, you know, like that they are in control of the space, and that they can choose how much they want to show, and
an interesting choice that actually empowers our protagonists, I believe, quite a bit.
And I think like it's also somehow on the edge of, you know, because the stories are already very, very emotional. Like, we are dealing with loss of like loved ones, you know, like people getting murdered by racist violence. So we didn't want the to somehow make it too like, I don't know, kitschig, like, you know.
So, yeah,
it would have been like over
serious.
the top
Yes.
if we, then chose to dramatize it. So.
Or to over dramatize it, because I think the issues are quite dramatic enough.
Yes.
With no further introduction needed, I think. What do you think about the whole trial situation that happened with the NSU? Were you able, or were your protagonists able to say, okay, they have a certain sense of closure in regards to that, or do they say the issues are still very present and are still being ignored? Is there a balance between those two, maybe?
We were following the trial closely because it was happening at the same time where we were actually like producing and doing the post-production of our film. But from the beginning on, we actually said it's not part of our film to include the trial in Munich, because it was just, it's not the focus of our protagonists. Like, they don't see that their questions are getting answered there. And in the film, like, you will also see like Osman, he will ask again and again, you know, like, why was it my brother? Like, why my brother of all people? Why did it have to be him? And these questions will never be answered. So I think there's no closure possible like that. And in that trial, which went on for 5 years or longer, like it became clear quite soon that the questions, like the real questions of the relatives, they wouldn't be answered there. So I think most people were not even surprised about the outcome, and they are still not happy about the outcome, because it's just not what they needed.
Do you think that maybe further along in the future your movie can give them, well, maybe not closure, but a road to a more satisfied life?
I think, at least like in making the film, our protagonists did say that it felt empowering to, you know, like to tell their stories, to actually also see how it all was brought together in the film, and how it interweaves and, you know, like actually produces something new. So I think that's something positive, but like I wouldn't go as far to say that it offers a solution or anything. But it definitely, it's something that maybe is a small part in helping them to cope with what has happened. And also to you know, like continue the discussion about it, to not let it die off, and to have people still like remember it and talk about it when the film is screened.
Yeah, I think it's the tragedies that happened also within the families are quite severe, and I think Alisa, your film also deals with a lot of family trouble in home games. Your protagonist is Alina, a soccer player who is extremely talented, but she's quite troubled. And I wanted to ask you how you got to know Alina and what your process was like. Well, why did you choose to give us an insight into her life?
Story, because my cousin played football, and when I was even 5 years old, I went first time to football game, and it was a female football. And I made my diploma film about my cousin, but it was film about a woman who was already like out of sport career, and she wanted to find her way in life. But during this filming process, I figured out that lots of girls who came to football, even during like 90s, they went from very complicated family situation. And for them, it was escaping this dramatic situation in their families. And after when I met younger players, I was surprised because it was the same. Like and almost like 70% of girls, they had lots of trouble with their parents, or the parents were alcoholics or something like this. And football for them, it was just fight for life. And I made this film about my cousin, and I wanted to back to this topic again, and went to only one female football club in Kiev, in capital of Ukraine. And I was like filming a bit, and I talked with the coach of this team, and she told me a story about Alina, and immediately I understood that I want to film her. So yeah.
The style in which your film is shot is interesting because we have, well, of course, a documentary style where we're observing what's happening, but a lot of your choices also show very intimate situations with your protagonist. And I was wondering, what were the motivations behind making that choice and combining these elements together?
I started film without any money, any support, by myself. And it was like I bought a new camera and I didn't even use it before. So for me it was also school of film by myself alone with this new camera, and I started filming first day when I found her. I decided, okay, I have to film immediately because life was going on. And it's good because if I wait, then Dalina's mother died. When I started filming, in 2 months, her mother died, and all troubles started for her, even much more. So it was the right decision for me that I wanted to be close and very just now. I couldn't wait, and she's living in a very small apartment. So it's only one room, 5 people living there. So you can be just there to be with them, and you will already have this intimacy because you're part of this atmosphere. You are a kind of chair in this room, and for me it was important. That's why I spent lots of time there. And sometimes I slept there, on the floor, because it was not enough bed, and just since the morning until 9 until midnight. I stayed just there, and that's how I saw that how I have to make this film. So
you were living the life essentially, or living with her in order to really understand what she was going through.
Yeah, and at some moment we received some money, support, some funding, NIHRFF fund, and after I could invite a cameraman, but mostly all episodes in the inside apartment, me who filmed it, and everything outside of home, because it was impossible to put another person in this small apartment. Also put sound director. It was also impossible. That's why it's maybe shitty sounds. You can hear it. We tried to make it better on the post-production, but it was complicated because I didn't want to break this intimacy. It's only me, and they used to me, and
How was your film received within your home country, and how has that the film process? How has that affected your relationship with your protagonist?
Generally, it's very good. It's even a situation with the film special because we made a first short film because we received some grant from the Guardian, and we were supposed to make a short film for them, 16 minutes. And the short film was earlier, released 1 year before the full-length film. And Alina liked a lot this short film. It was more breed dog style. Yeah, and this film traveled a lot because we also had support from our documentary film festival, Docu Days in Ukraine. And they have this like network in all Ukrainian villages. They organize also screen in schools, and with these short versions, they show it a lot because it's short film. It's very like clear. It's all members of this like networking. They decided to do this film, and they showed everywhere. And with the full-length film, we showed it like we have 2 big festivals in Ukraine, and we didn't have theatrical release because it's very complicated in Ukraine with documentary films. During the screens at these festivals, it was very received very well. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Eloy, Serén, your movie Hamada deals with people who are essentially almost forgotten, or specifically chosen and forgotten, the Zarabi. What can you tell us about the people that were the subject of your film, and about their lifestyle, and maybe even the reasons why their story has never really been told the way like this before?
This is a very unknown conflict, unfortunately, in most of Europe. Probably because there's no economical pressure in this part of the world, so maybe this makes it less interesting from a political point of view, because their situation is a political deadlock. They have been abandoned in refugee camps in the middle of the Sahara Desert for 45 years now, and there has been no will from either the United Nations or the European Parliament to find a real solution. Of course, there's a mission there all the time, but basically in the Sahara we feel that this United Nations delegation meets in order to set the date of the next meeting. This is a typical joke that they tell about the situation. The interesting thing about this film is that, first of all, of course, we wanted to make visible this conflict, because beyond Spain and a bit France, I think that it's not known. It's been really a confirmation, the fact that the film has been shown around a lot, and most of the countries, they say, I had no idea that there's a refugee camp here, and it's been going on for 4 decades already. But the interesting thing is that the film in the end is about the young people being stuck, in this case in the middle of the Sahara Desert, in the most isolated and rough part of this desert. So it's very interesting and satisfying that people from, for example, in the north of Norway watch the film, or in the south of Argentina, and the young people can relate a lot with this, because even though the political context is totally different, emotionally they feel also isolated and stuck, and they just want to fly away. So the film is about basically how it feels to be 20 years old and to be in a place where nothing is happening, where nothing is changing, at the same time that everything is changing inside you. So you have all this vitality, all this energy, all these expectations of life. So you are growing in a rhythm that the place where you belong don't follow. And at the same time, of course, how it feels to grow up in a place that you are told this is not your place, because they come from Western Sahara. This Western Sahara has been under occupation for 4 decades. So it's a very conflictive identity. They were born in refugee camps in the middle of the desert, and they are constantly repeated, you don't belong to this place. So even though, despite the fact that this is not a place for human beings, there's no water, 55 degrees in summertime, constant windstorms, and even with the additional layer of you cannot feel these places like home. So that's part of the problematic as well.
Yeah, and I think the tragic thing is that all of these young people are essentially born there, and they have never experienced any other life except for that. And that must have made quite an impact on you. And how did you even get to hear about the situation, and what was the process like before you decided to really make this film and tell the story, especially for these young people, and give them hope?
Western Sahara used to be a Spanish colony, so Spanish people, at least those who are a bit interested in politics, really know about this conflict. And of course, there's a gap between the attitude of the Spanish state and the Spanish citizens about this conflict. Most of the aid that Sahrawi receive come from Spain, but not from the state, but from NGOs. So it's not uncommon, for example, that Spanish people go there, or even try to bring Sahrawi children during the summer, because summer is really rough, to Spain. There's a specific program for 2 months. They come, they go to hospitals, to dentists, and especially they are not in the summer where, as I said, it's 55 degrees, it's really rough conditions. So of course there's mutual knowledge between Spanish people and Sahrawi people. The first time I went there, I went as a teacher, as a film teacher, as a volunteer. There's a small film school in one of the camps, and I went there. And it was very exciting because it was the very first generation who had access to cameras, to computers, to editing material. So it was the very first generation to tell their own stories. So
even having access to the outside world,
exactly.
Media.
Of course, internet is something very new. The first time I was there, 2014, there was no internet. Now in 2018, when I was there was even data in the phone, which is something very new. But the interesting thing is that at the same time that we were making this film, many of them were making their own short films as well. So it was like several projects at the same time. So I always say that this film, Hamada, is a small part of a bigger project, and even a life project for me as well. And we're very happy about the results.
I can imagine. What was the shooting process like, and how long did it take for you to actually make this film?
I was there 9 months, but it was divided in 4 trips because the visa is 2 months, and because of health reasons, they don't recommend you to stay longer than that, and also the visa, they don't renovate and so on. So it was 9 months. It's a very small community, and even though they receive sometimes Spanish people, as I said, for 1 week, they're definitely not used to people staying 9 months. So we developed a lot of intimacy. I have even a Sahrawi family now. They call me Son, and they introduce me as, this is my brother. That's also like a very satisfying part of the process as well, like this intimacy that we got. And this was very interesting to, for example, to get very humoristic situations, because one of the things that the adults, Sahrawi adults, when they watch the film, they say that they have never heard this language of the young people, because the protagonists are young people. They talk a lot in slang, and they use a lot of expressions that they would never use in front of adult people. So even for adult people from a Sahrawi society, it's very interesting to hear their own children or neighbors talking like that, and what they care about, what they dream of, how they flirt, for example, And so in that sense, humor is a very spontaneous thing that happened in the film, but it's a very important layer also to connect with this character. I was very impressed in such a dramatic situation, how much they used humor to face daily life. That was
and to survive,
really
and to cope with that situation.
Yeah.
So how many people in this camp have actually seen your film, and what was the effect overall? We've seen the exchange between adults and the younger generation, but also in general, what were how did they react?
A lot of people from the camps have seen the film, but we have been wanting to hold a public screening, and the female protagonist, Sahra, who's very stubborn and very determined, she didn't want to show it yet until a festival called Sahra will take place there, because this film takes place every year, and it's a huge event for the community. There's 5 camps, and all of them gather in one of them to watch films. So unfortunately last year it was cancelled because of lack of funding. So I called her and I said, the festival will not happen, but we will come anyways, and we will make something very beautiful in a courtyard or whatever. And she was like, like she's in the film, she's really stubborn and determined, and it's impressive. So she was the same, like no, until this festival happens, they cannot watch the film because they have to see me in a big screen, and all my cousins from all the camps have to come. So in March it will be shown there in the camps. But there's a lot of Sahrawi people in Spain, and even one of the protagonists is in Spain. He has been accompanying the film. It's been very emotional because his mother died while he was in Spain, and his mother was one of the reasons he wanted to come to Spain in order to be able to send money. So it was a very beautiful and touching experience to accompany this film with him. We were very lucky to win in a very important Spanish festival the award to Best Spanish Film, and he received it because he has faced racism in Spain, and through this film he got to know a lot of Spanish people that maybe he wouldn't meet in his daily life. So this has also been a very beautiful process for him, and not only because of the film, of course, but also to have the chance to talk one-to-one to people about his situation in Spain and the situation of his family. So he has been accompanying the film. It has been theatrically released, and he has been accompanying as well together. So yeah, it's been a very beautiful process. And as I said, Sahrawi people living in Spain felt that it was a right representation of how daily life in the camps is, about this emptiness, this waiting, this longing. And especially something, again, surprising is the humor. It works everywhere, because I thought that maybe humor is something sometimes very local and it's about the language, but it's been working very well everywhere. So in Spain too. Yeah, definitely, or in Holland, or in Scotland, or in Argentina. So it's very interesting that in the end it's young people caring about things that young people care about. Yeah,
that's great to hear. Sahra, Mani, your film deals with really heavy issues, and humor almost seems to have no place in it. I was wondering what it was like for you to shoot this movie in your home country of Afghanistan, and what the obstacles were for you shooting this particular subject that was largely ignored.
I didn't decide to make a film about incest. First of all, I went there to visit this lady, this young woman. So I was watching a film about her confession in Afghan TV, and then I went there to see how can I help her. And then later on, after a month, she found out that I am filmmaker, and then she told me, I always want someone make a film about my life story because I have a story to tell. Then in that time, I was not sure, but I said, okay, we will try. And then in the first 6 months, I didn't believe there is a film because it was one room, dark room, and a heavy story, and one child and 2 women in one room, and there is no mise-en-scène. So I thought maybe it's a good subject for a reportage, but not for a feature-length documentary. So, but I stayed, and it took me 6 months to find out how to tell the story, because when the process of justice for her start, then I find out how judicial system of Afghanistan treat a woman, rape victims, and how society treat a rape victim. In the worst case, even the rape is incest. So, at that moment, I feel like how it's important to make this film, and how it's important to talk about corrupt judicial system in Afghanistan, and how she's a brave and a strong woman to tell me her story, as she suggests me in the beginning that I have story to tell. So in the first time when she shared that thought that she has a story, I trust her, and until the end, which took a few years, almost 3 years of shooting. So she was a stand of her thought that she's really want to tell her story and shares her story and be voice for other women they are in the same situation. Because in the first moment she told me, I believe that there is 1,000 women like me in this country, and I want to be voice for them, because it's shame to talk about incest in all society, and especially in Muslim society and conservative society. So I think she's the first woman who decided to talk about incest. And when you want to live different, you have to pay high price. And she was willing to pay that price, but do what she wants to do. So with all these things I find out, so I am part of her journey now, and I have to go with her to the end of her journey, with film or without film. So I have to be physically there. So many times happened, I went there and visit her, and I follow her in the court and everywhere, and I didn't go with my camera. So I go alone, because somewhere it's not allowed to go with the camera, and some stage of the film I forgot about the film because I couldn't take with camera with me so many places. And I said, in the beginning I was said I have to make a film, but later on I was faced with a lot of ban to go with the court with the camera, to go to the city with the camera, and they said probably I will make a film only her inside her house, which is only one room and two living room. So, or maybe it will not happen. But luckily, in the end, we find, after first of court, I find out, no, there is a film.
Wow. And this journey is still going on between you and your protagonist. And how did your relationship change? Because I imagine you've gotten quite close over time.
Yeah, we were really close, and it's happened to me. I always, I think it's part of my culture in Middle East or in Afghanistan, I don't know. People are really close, you know, when you go to people's house, you have to drink and you have to eat with them. Otherwise, you didn't respect them enough. So we always had lunch or dinner together. We always drink tea together. And sometimes she visits me at home and in the same situation. So it creates a relationship. If I want to keep the distance, it's impossible, because she's there, and and always she treats me in her house very well. So you know, I never focus on poverty. Even she was very poor because of the situation, because the poverty is part of my culture as a country who've been in the war for more than 40 years, 50 years. So poverty and so many problems which a war brings is part of my culture. So I try to focus how she's strong. Back to your question, because we live together from early morning until late night, every day, like 5 days per week. So and a few years, and I help her through her pregnancy, delivering baby, and I help her by finding a lawyer. So you know, I was in the situation. I think I have to do something. I try, like for 8 months, I try to be a flyer on the wall, and don't tell anything and don't do anything. But later on, I find, you know, it's kind of decision for a filmmaker how much they want to involve in the protagonist's life. So I believe we shouldn't involve, you know, like. But when you are in war zone in Afghanistan and you are facing with a woman with 2 babies, and all society against her, and she's a risk to lose her life, and you know, the whole society was against her as if she's a liar. So, and I find out, so I feel like I am the last hope for her, because she's thinking this film gonna save her life, and this film gonna raise her voice that she's not liar, or what's happened to her is true. So she took as a film something really important, and as a filmmaker I know the power of the film, and she already knew that, the power of film. So, and she trusts the film, then trust me. So it was very important for me to finish the film in the way she deserved. But the relationship happened, and I find out if I couldn't finish this film, I might be able to make a short film. But sometimes I feel if she lost her life, I can't give her another life. Nobody can give another life to her. But if I lost my film, I can go and make another film. So that's why I try to put her security more important than my film. I believe most of the filmmakers can do that, because we are in this field, in this job, because we believe we have to live better. We believe to bring peace, justice to our societies, and in the end to our world. So I don't know, maybe when I get older and become more experienced filmmaker, I could make another decision. But in some stage I find out, so I have to consider her and her life and her needs more important than my film. So, and try to at least find the equal between both.
There's a quote that I would like to present. You said once that your life hasn't begun until you turned 22. Why did you say that, and what did you mean by that?
My life didn't start? Okay. Oh, I have to talk a lot, then it's a long story. You know, I grew up as a refugee child in one of the, I can't say worse, but not a good place to be a refugee in Iran. So I was Afghan child refugee living in Iran, because my family escaped the war when Afghanistan became war zone with the Soviet Union. So
it was back in the 80s.
Yeah, and then we couldn't go to school as a refugee, and we couldn't get a train, we couldn't get a flight, and our parents couldn't go to work. So you can imagine how the life is horrible things in that age. So, and then I managed to finish my education somehow, and then I managed to get out of Iran and I started studying cinema, because in that moment, before I started studying cinema and go to university in UK, I didn't know much about life and what bring value to the life. Like art, like cinema, like music, dance, they are something could make us happy and could make life more valuable, to have something important to think about and be happy about. So I think I said that, I don't know where and when I said that, but I mean when I started studying cinema and getting knows about art, and then getting a feeling that I have enough freedom to study, to work, and get train and get flight. So this means the life starts for me. So I'm not telling that because someone pity or telling my own life story. I'm telling that because I knew there's 1,000 and million people are living around the world and we don't know about their story, but maybe they are even worse than the situation I had. And still I have a brother and sister in Iran, they are living as a refugee and they are in the same situation, and they didn't have chance to come on that point I receive in today, and still they thinking, okay, this is life, and so we have some right and we don't have some right, it's okay. But now I believe it's not okay. We should have our freedom and we should have this chance to make a decision who we want to become and what we want to fight for. I think, like, it's good to have artists, and filmmaker or writer from my own region. Like someone come from Afghanistan or Syria or Lebanon or Iraq or Iran, those countries, they grew up with this lack of opportunity and with all consequences of growing in the war, in poverty, in discrimination. Then they can be able to describe what they went through.
How was your film received in Afghanistan? Because since your protagonist had to face so many enemies and she only had you as a friend essentially throughout this whole process, what was the result of the film inside Afghanistan? How was it received?
Young women and women activists, they love the film and they love Khatira, of course, and they encourage me a lot. But I have a problem with the people. They were not nice with Khatira. And Khatira escaped Afghanistan, but I am there. And when they feel like they hate Khatira and they hate me, they always have chance to come to me and ask me to pay back for what I said to my film. But I am happy because Afghanistan will build one day with the next generation and young feminists and young men and young women. They want better society. And I am hoping this country will build one day by them. They love the film and they love art, and they believe on freedom of expression. So I had a chance to screen this film many times, and recently in one of the local film festival in Afghanistan, this film received award of best director. And so many good comments I received.
That's great to hear.
But not from government, but from people.
Okay, of course.
Yeah.
Always like that.
Since it's called 1,000 Girls Like Me, have other girls approached you after seeing this film?
After this film, we had 2 more cases. They went to media and talk about sexual harassment. And one of them get justice, and 2 cases, I think, for Afghanistan, it's kind of success. And the good thing is, after screening of my film in one of the universities, people stand up and they talk about their experience about incest and rape to the neighbors or friendship or family, relative. And what exactly I want is to bring this subject to the people conversation in my society. I want them to talk about it. It's not taboo, like to broke the taboo and people talk about it. So I think somehow with this film start, but it's only one film, and I couldn't promise the film could do so many things for the society. And I am only one person, and my film is only one. And my society is suffering from so many problems and from different angles and so many elements to discuss in my society. It's just one film, and it couldn't bring so many change, and it couldn't promise. But still, it's something.
I think all of your films here are a good way to start heading society in a better direction. What are your hopes for the future, and especially with your films now, but in general for yourselves? What would you like to achieve? What would you like to see your films do?
Is it a general question for anybody?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, in my case, the main goal, was of course to make visible this conflict. We thought it was really a shame that nobody is discussing this conflict, basically, as Sahrawi people say, because there's no blood. So maybe that's why it's not in media. So in that sense, we are very satisfied that the fact that the film is traveling a lot, and one of the most rewarding experiences is 1 or 2 days after a screening in a city, people send you an email and tell you, I went home, I went to Wikipedia or whatever, and I was reading about this, I was discussing it, or even, for example, something very interesting is that when they even discuss it with Moroccan neighbors. As Sahra says, the fact that they discuss about it, they acknowledge this, because the main problem of Sahrawi people, despite the rough conditions in which they live, it's that they feel forgotten, despite, let's say, the lack of perspectives in the future. They also feel that nobody knows they exist. They're in the corner of the Sahara Desert. For many geopolitical reasons, they are not in the agenda. So in that sense, I think it's the goal was fulfilled. Of course, I make an effort to be in every single screening of the film because unluckily I'm the only one with the freedom to travel around. Sid Ahmed, the protagonist, is in Spain, but he cannot get out of Spain. The other two are in the camps, and despite our efforts, they have never been able to get even a passport, not to mention a visa. So since I'm the only person who can represent the film, at least outside of Spain, I make an effort to go to every single screening in that sense. And it's very rewarding to see that emotionally people connect with them, and that's when politically they get interested in that. That's very interesting about how, because the film is not it's not very informative about the conflict. It's more about their daily routines, about how they relate, about actually the main topic of the film is cars. It's the story of these young people through cars, which is a metaphor because they have cars, but these cars cannot take them anywhere. There's not even roads. So the car is a symbol of mobility in a place that doesn't move at all, that's like frozen in time. So that's of course the main goal, to create this empathy, and through empathy, like political acknowledgement, right? That's the word? Yeah. But of course, as all my colleagues said, the impact is very limited. It's a small film in a very specific circuit, and even though for us might feel like really fulfilling to go to all these countries, in the end it's a small film. Those days in Spain, it was in cinemas, in theaters. That was really important for us, and it's been also in the French TV, and that's really important. But we all know the limitations of the impact of our work, of course. But within the Sahrawi community, there are 150,000 people. It's been a very important film, and the most satisfying thing is that they felt really represented. There had been other, maybe not films, but a reportage about this made by activists, and this point of view is very important, of course. But some people told me that this is the first time that they see their daily lives and their waiting, but also the humor and also the hope represented. So this is the main achievement.
The many sides
feel,
of how these people really are, essentially, and not just fragments. What about your films?
I think I can just totally, agree to what you said. Like, I think for the second attack, like the Zweite Anschlag, it's similar that through creating empathy, like people can maybe have a new approach to a topic that is, like we talked about it earlier, that racism in Germany, it has been discussed a lot, but maybe through the film it's possible to have an emotional approach to that topic, and I think that's maybe something new, and that offers also, just to think about it in a different way again. And what I realized is that like the younger people are in Germany, the less they can actually know about all these things. Like for them it seems almost historic. Like this morning we had a screening with a school class, and they're like in 10th grade, and none of them had heard of these incidents before. So, you know, and they've just like happened a few years ago, and they are still happening, but still, people don't know. And I think it's important to actually get people to again think about it, to somehow, or to get the discussion maybe started again within groups that usually wouldn't easily discuss it. And we also had screenings in like police academies, like where, you know, German police people are trained, and I think that's also like an audience that we can't really approach by ourselves, but through partners we've got the film there. And
what was their reaction?
I was really anxious that, you know, we walk in and all of them are just playing on their phones and no one actually watches the movie. But they were really attached to it. Like some people were crying. They were all like glued to the screen. So it was, and Ibrahim, one of our protagonists, was there with us, and a lot of people actually wanted to speak to him afterwards. And there was like a lot of empathy, and I didn't expect that, and I found it really positive. And so I hope that this film also will get more people, you know, like an audience who maybe, you know, isn't already involved in all these things like privately on a daily basis, but maybe people who need this new emotional approach to actually think about it again, or think about it in a new way.
Yes, Alisa.
No, the festival circle of home games almost finished, I think. So 1.5, it was in June premiere. So I started 2 new projects, and back to home games. After I finished the film, I also made a TV series. I received a proposition from One TV, Current Time TV, to make 10 episodes about female football documentary films. Mm-hmm. And before I never worked for TV, and I was like, no, never TV, never. But finally I was thinking, okay, but it will bring these girls who play football and nobody knows them, that people will know them, at least a little bit more. And no, it was very, very nice experience, and I found really super good stories. I found one girl in the mountains who play with the boys because there is no female club, and she's training with the cows, like in a very small village. Yeah, but I found really super nice stories, and it was crazy time because it was premiere of Home Games. I was finishing this series, and but after this, I noticed that Football 1, we have a 2 TV channel, Football 1 and Football 2, they start to show like a game of some clubs or like female football. And they start to show also national team. No, it's good that you can make something with your film. You can help also, like everybody said here. So yeah. That is, I will be sure.
What about you, Sahra? I think you've touched upon a lot of things, that how your movie can affect people and maybe change the world for better. But if you would care to elaborate a little further, you're free to do so.
In Afghanistan or
in general?
In general, when I arrived in Nuremberg a few days ago, a girl who watched my film told me that when I watch your film, I feel like how much valuable things I have in my life, which I never mentioned it, and how lovely parents and a safe society I grew up, and I never look at it as a valuable things, and most of the thing sometimes I'm complaining about things. So she basically, many people told me that they have to appreciate with what they born with and where they grow up. It's so sad things to compare ourselves with a victim and appreciate. But what we have, or you have in Europe, it's something people fighting for many, many years. And you have this. We have to look after our achievement in the world, like a peace or like a education system, health system, and try to increase it to the rest of the world. Sometimes when people get power in your countries, in US or Europe, when they are coming and getting power with radical ideology, I am worried for all achievement human being receive after many years of fight. Yeah. So, I mean, when you compare your life with the people's life, they grew up in the war and lack of chance and facility, I think we have to appreciate what we have. And as I told earlier, and all my colleagues mentioned, so for Afghanistan, I hope this film could impact on women issues and the judicial system and the corruption in judicial system of Afghanistan, and all the other system in Afghanistan, which we have received the first place in whole the world as a corrupt country. So I'm hoping we could find a way to with the corruption, at least for judicial system in my country.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing such insights, not only into your films, but also all the cultural backgrounds that come into play, and that was really beautiful. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you.
Please enjoy the rest of the festival, and I wish you all the best and all the luck.